Hello, Hushi here. I'm going to lead you through inking. So you're going to learn how to ink. And we have our lovely little Corgi from the video that was about using Clip Studio Paint and learning how to sketch. I hope you'll keep practicing, learning how to see things in their component shapes. We're going to pick up with the sketch here and turn it down to about half opacity. You can control the opacity through this little bar here. Add a new layer with this button here, a new raster layer. And we're going to want to zoom in. I usually work at about 300% because it gets me closer to the lines and I can have more control over my inking. I have created a pen myself that is one that I particularly like to use, but you can use any of these that come with Clip Studio Paint. There's a bunch of other stuff in here. They've added some realistic tools fairly recently, which are very, very fun to use. I especially like the watercolors. With inking, you want to choose the lines you want to keep. Since you are not sketching in ink when you are inking, you are using the lines to make a finished, polished product. In traditional inking, of course, you're using actual ink, so you can't really erase. However, most of you will probably be using a graphics tablet, so you'll probably be doing this digitally. What I would suggest for that is just get comfortable with it, and also get comfortable with your tablet. Get comfortable with the undo button, because you're going to be using it a good bit. The undo function is one of the greatest functions of computers, and I fully recommend having it assigned to a key on your tablet. When we are inking and choosing which lines to keep, we want to use the lines that will give it a three-dimensional appearance. So you can do these, and make sure you erase any of the little outstanding lines. It makes it look better. Also, you might see here, for example, where we have otherwise, I'll zoom in a bit more, otherwise we would have just a straight, direct intersection. But I have added a little bit of sort of shading, really. It is more like a traditional pen when you do that. As you can see, if I were to draw these two lines, let's say, those are pretty straight lines. And they just look like a 90-degree intersection. That doesn't look very like you would do it by hand. It doesn't look like traditional inks. So sometimes you'll want to smooth out that and give it the appearance of ink so that you can have it look a bit more natural. But I need to get rid of that because it's not really something that I want on my picture. In any case, when you ink, you want to choose the lines that will give you the outcome you like. You want to choose the lines that make your corgi look nice and fluffy. And here you can have these little tapered corners, and it's okay. Some things are easier than others. Sometimes I find, especially like curves, to be a little bit tricky. And I am very picky with my lines, but then I can be, because I have an undo button and I don't have to live with any lines I don't want. So you can leave some of the lines if you particularly like them. You can even leave some of the sort of outstanding little bits if you think that they add something. Now here I think I am going to go like this a bit and just sort of freestyle some fluff for his ear. And here you can do just about the same thing. And every line does not have to be connected. However, if you're going to color it or tone it, you may want to be sure that the lines in a certain area are connected, because when you color something, you usually want to set an area that is colored and then work on that. But we'll work on that more when I actually do a coloring video. So with this, for example, you'll probably want finer little strokes so that you can make it look like it is detail. Doing it in this shape gives the snout, as it were, a more three-dimensional feel, because this is coming out towards the viewer. And if you add just a little bit of shading there, it gives a contour that gives the nose shape. Similarly, when you're doing a nose or something like that, you can close it off here, or you can just leave that undone. I'm going to just about close it off, though, because I want it to look a bit more complete. And I don't think I'm going to put in the nostril details, because they don't really add all that much. But this is also something that, as an artist, you're going to need to cultivate a sense of what belongs in the picture and what does not. So do the little mouth, and let's give our corgi some teeth. I want it to be a little bit. There we go. There we go. Now with this, I'm going to do a little bit of that. And the great thing about having the digital option is that you can turn off a layer, and then you can bucket fill. You go to the subtool, which is a fill, and refer other layers, because just in case you really don't want to just do it on this one layer. You can do that, though. And especially if you have, as I said earlier, if you have the area blocked in like this, you can do that. You can just have it on refer edited layer only. That means it's only going to do this layer. So for example, if I wanted to fill this in, this nose, let's say, boom, although it does have some leak because it is not a closed area. If I wanted to do it to the whole face, boom. But as you can see, you really have to prepare it a bit, or else you get kind of a mess. Regardless, you can also get basically the same results with the edited layer only, because we are working on only this one layer. But I'd like to bring that back because I'm not quite ready for that yet. So you can add these little strokes to the cheeks. And I normally don't go too much between sizes of like my pen, but you can if you want to. You can turn up the sizes, and I have a knob, a dial on my tablet that allows me to do that from the tablet. But you can also go here and just select whatever size you'd like. I suggest you get used to a size and just use that. Use less pressure for, of course, the finer details like this. You want quick strokes. But for more firmer lines, you know, you can just bear down a bit. But you will want to develop a kind of a light hand. When you do work, you will definitely want to cultivate a lighter touch, and just like that. I will tell you that I always use a wrist brace. It is a simple wrap brace, but it is really good to have. There are also a lot of nice exercises that you can do. And the exercises are for any sort of repetitive stress. So like drummers and so forth. In fact, the person that I learned my exercises from, my stretches to avoid tendonitis, a drummer taught me. So I always enjoyed that video because it helped me so much with repetitive motions. So you don't want to get carpal tunnel, and you can very easily get it if you're an artist. But I'm just making these eyes look a bit more defined. If you ever do eyeliner in real life, this is basically what you're doing. You're making the eyes more defined so that they stand out, and so that the eyes aren't just sort of floating on something else. And here I'm going to give our Korg some little fluffs. As you can see, it's not terribly hard to ink, but perhaps the most important part of it is finding which lines you want to keep. And that also goes with shadow. You might not want to have that shape of a shadow, or you may want to just do it by hand, as I can do it here. We can do the edited layer only or refer other layers. The reason why I keep it on refer other layers is because most of the time that's what you're going to want. So I don't like to switch between them when it's needless, because it's just more work for me. I always try and be as efficient as possible, and that just, it takes time, and so it costs you more efficiency. And I'm going to shape this with that shadow down there because I want to give it more of a feel of 3 dimensions and substance rather, a substantive quality. I will many times turn off the penciling layer when I am inking, especially when I have to fill an area. So you might want to get used to that. I think it's generally something good to check your lines, especially if you want to check it versus the pencil sketch, which you probably will want to do. So you just do that. I think I'll keep that kind of sharp edge there. Sort of rounder, fluffier one there. And you don't have to get it perfect every time. Most people aren't going to notice the details that you work on, which is unfortunate, but that's the way of the world. But do try and get your lines smoothly together, because like you could easily go whoop, and that just doesn't look good, for example. Or, you know, if you don't quite get that right, you can just keep doing it as many times as you like. But personally, I think I'm going to just do a little one down here. And I think I lagged a little. You can also use various line drawing tools, and I in fact recommend it because the subtool here, which is the figure tool, allows you for straight lines, continuous curves, which are, this is what a continuous curve is. Basically a line where you can lay out points and curve it. An ellipse, which is any sort of circular shape, rectangle, curves, polylines, all these different things. I would not recommend going crazy with those until you really understand them, but try them out. Feel free to try them out because, as I said before, you have an undo tool. And, okay, right here, I decided to make it more 3-dimensional by putting that line up here. But this line does not look good right here. So I'm going to do that ink thing to make it a smoother corner instead of just a sharp intersection between 2 lines. This makes it look more natural to the eye, and it also makes it look like more traditional work. I'll show you some more different ways, especially in color, how you can make something look like a more traditional work. But right now, I think you just want a nice sort of round shape. In the future, we'll probably talk more about the planes that a character needs to be on. But right now, it's not that important. I would also like to recommend for you to take a look at some pictures and see if you can break them down into their component shapes. And now I'm just going to put some little lines there to make it feel like the leg is part of the body. And I'm going to do that inking thing to smooth out those intersections between lines. And there you have it. There's our little corgi. And I've forgotten to put some little toes right here. I'm just doing very small little shapes, seeing how they look. And there you have our little corgi. And I also forgot that he deserves a little heart up here. That was a little too far out, so I made it a little sloppy. It doesn't really look like the heart that I penciled, but that's okay. Sometimes you have to change things. So there is our little corgi, inked and ready for when we want to tackle coloring. Whatever you want to do with your inking is fine. If you want to keep it as a sketch, it's fine. Some people prefer this sketch, largely because I think you have to use your imagination, so you kind of gloss over anything that may not be perfect. So you're sort of seeing a more perfect thing when you have something that's sketchy. But when you have the lines, they're much starker and much bolder. So as a result, you end up seeing more that might not be exactly how you interpret it. In any case, I think it's a perfectly serviceable picture. I think it's very cute, and you can work on your inking, and I think it will be a great thing if you can decide which lines you want and which lines you don't. We can also go in and add things very easily, thanks to the wonderfulness of digital art. So if I want to add this here, which I definitely do, it'll give it a more three-dimensional appearance. So now I turn off the pencil reference, smooth that out a bit, et voila, a more three-dimensional corgi. The techniques that you use in inking are going to be different than the ones that you use in pencil sketching and in other media. However, I think that a good inking philosophy and a good inking technique and approach can help just about every artist at every level of skill. So please do work on becoming accustomed to some of the pens and what they can do for you. You'll find that a lot of the pens have different uses depending on what they are and how their tips are. For example, like the turnip pen has a sort of a squarer, well, I don't mean square as in square shape, sort of a fuller, more balanced, rounded tip. So you can use it for things like lettering without worrying about it sort of tapering off as much as some other pens will. But for some pens and some inkers, you'll want a tapered end to ink. So it's a lot of different things. A lot of people will use a G pen in real life, and there's a real G pen there too, to do inking. There's also just a bunch of options, so please do play around with them, and please do check out the tool properties, and don't be afraid to play with them, because as I've hovered over this option, you can always reset any subtool to its default settings, and you can also click this button and edit all of the values, including hidden ones. So you are free to do just about anything you want with any tool in Clip Studio Paint. The options may be overwhelming, but I recommend at least looking at them and playing with a few. You can play very easily, and I think that is a good thing. In any case, there's options like locking the subtool temporarily. There's brush size, opacity, anti-aliasing, which makes a line smoother, stabilization, which allows you to stabilize your lines, just various things. So play around with it, and your corgi will thank you for it. I do hope you'll share with me your inking and all of your sketches, and keep practicing on figuring out how to make component parts and component shapes out of pictures you see. I'll see you again. You're welcome. Bye.